That morning, as Rusty slept off his night wanderings, the mouse dream came again, even more vivid than before. Free of his collar, beneath the moon, he stalked of the timid creature. But this time he was aware that he was being watched. Shining from the shadows of the forest, he saw dozens of yellow eyes. The clan cats have entered his dream world. Rusty woke, blinking in the bright sunshine that was streaming across the kitchen floor. His fur felt heavy and thick with warmth. His food bowl had been topped up, and his water bowl rinsed out and filled with bitter-tasting two-leg water. Rusty preferred drinking from puddles outside when it was hot, or when he was very thirsty. He had to admit it was easier to lap up the waters indoors. Could he really abandon this comfortable life? He ate, and then he pushed his way out of the clan's flap and into the garden. The day was promised to be warm, and the garden was heavy with the smell of early blossoms. "Hello, Rusty," meowed a voice from the fence. It was Smudge. "You should have been awake an hour ago." The baby sparrows were stretching their wings. "Did you catch any?" Rusty asked. Smudge yawned and licked his nose. "I couldn't be bothered. I'd already eaten enough at home. Anyway, why weren't you out earlier? Yesterday you were complaining about how Henry slept too much, and today you're not much better yourself." Rusty sat down on the cool earth beside the fence and curled his tail neatly over his front paws. "I was in the woods last night," he reminded his friend at once. He felt the blood stir in his veins and stiffen. Smudge looked down at him, his eyes wide. "Oh yes, I forgot. How was it? Did you catch anything, or did anything catch you?" Rusty paused, not sure how to tell his old friend what had happened. "I met some wildcats," he began. "What?" Smudge was very clearly shocked. "Did you get into a fight?" "Sort of." Rusty could feel the energy surging through his body again as he recalled the strength and power of the clan cats. "Were you hurt? What happened?" Smudge prompted him eagerly, but there were 3 of them, bigger and stronger than any of us. "And you thought all 3 of them?" Smudge interrupted, his tail twitching with excitement. "No," Rusty mewed hastily. "Just the youngest one. The other 2 came later." "How come they didn't shred you to pieces?" "They just wanted me to leave their territory, but then," hesitated Rusty. "What?" Smudge mewed impatiently. "They asked me to join their clan." Smudge's whiskers quivered disbelievingly. "They did," Rusty insisted. "Why would they do that?" "I don't know," Rusty admitted. "I think they need extra paws in their clans." "Sounds a bit odd to me," Smudgy used doubtfully. "I wouldn't trust them if I were you." Rusty looked at Smudge. His black and white friend had never shown any interest in venturing into the woods. He was perfectly content living with his housefolk. Would he ever understand the restless longing that Rusty's dreams stirred in him night after night? "But I do trust them," Rusty purred softly, "and I've made up my mind. I'm going to join them." Smudge scrambled down from the fence and stood in front of Rusty. "Please don't go, Rusty," he made in alarm. "I might never see you again." Rusty nudged him affectionately with his head. "Don't worry, my house folks will get another cat. You'll get on with him fine, and you will get along with everyone else." "But it won't be the same," Smudge wailed. Rusty twitched his tail impatiently. "That's the point. If I stay around here, they'll take me to the cutter. And it won't be the same anymore." Smudge looked puzzled. "The cutter?" he echoed. "The vet," Rusty explained. "To be altered, like Henry was." Smudge shrugged and stared down at his paws. "But Henry's all right," he mumbled. "I mean, I know he's a bit lazier now, but he's not unhappy. We could still have fun." Rusty felt his heart fill with sadness at the thought of leaving his friend. "I'm sorry, Smudge. I'll miss you, but I have to go." Smudge didn't reply, but stepped forward slightly and touched noses with Rusty. Fair enough. I can see, and I can't stop you. But at least let's spend one more morning together. Rusty found himself enjoying the morning even more than usual. Visiting his old haunts with Smudge, sharing words with the cats he had grown up with, every one of his senses felt supercharged, as if he was poised before a huge jump. As Sunhigh approached, Rusty grew more and more impatient to see if Lionheart would really be waiting for him. The idle buzz of meows from his old friends seemed to fade into the background. As all his senses strained toward the woods, Rusty jumped down from his garden fence for the last time and crept into the woods. He had said his goodbyes to Smudge. Now all his thoughts were focused on the forest and the cats who lived in it. As he approached the spot where he had met the clan cats the night before, he sat down and tasted the air. Tall trees shielded the ground from the midday sunshine, making it comfortably cool. Here and there, a patch of sunlight shone through a gap in the leaves and lit up the forest floor. Rusty could smell cat scent at last night, but he had no idea whether it was new or old. He lifted his head and sniffed uncertainly. You have a lot to learn, meowed a deep voice. Even the tiniest kit knows when there's another cat nearby. Rusty saw a pair of green eyes glinting from beneath a bramble bush. Now he recognized the scent. It was Lionheart. Can you tell if I'm alone? Asked the golden tabby, stepping into the light. Hastily, Rusty sniffed again. The scents of Blue Star and Gray Paw were still there, but not as strong as the previous night. Hesitantly he mewed, Blue Star and Gray Paw aren't with you this night. That's right, meowed Lionheart, but someone else is. Rusty sniffed as the second clan cat came into the clearing. This is White Storm, purred Lionheart, one of the Thunder Clan's senior warriors. Rusty looked at the Tom, and he felt his spine tingle with cold fear. Was this a trap? Long-bodied and muscular, White Storm stood in front of Rusty and gazed down at him. His white coat was thick and unmarked, and his eyes were yellow and of sun-baked sand. Rusty flattened his ears warily and tensed his muscle in preparation for a fight. Relax before your seer friend brings up unwanted attention, growled Lionheart. We are here to take you to our camp. Rusty sat very still, hardly daring to breathe, as White Storm stretched his nose forward and gave him a curious sniff. Hello, young one, murmured the white cat. I've heard a lot about you. Rusty dipped his head in greeting. Come, we can speak more once we are in the camp, ordered Lionheart, and without pausing, he and White Storm leaped away into the undergrowth. Rusty jumped to his paws and followed as quickly as he could. The two warriors made no allowances for Rusty as they sped through the forest, and before long he was struggling to keep up. Their pairs barely slowed as they led him over a fallen tree that they cleared in a single lap, but which Rusty had to scramble over paw by paw. They passed through sharply fragrant pine trees where they had to jump across deep gullies churned by a two-legged tree-eater from the safety of his garden. Rusty had often heard it roaring and snarling in the distance. One gully was too wide to jump. Half filled with slimy, foul-smelling water, the clan cats waded through it without hesitation. Rusty had never put a paw in water before, but he was determined to not show any signs of weakness, so he narrowed his eyes and followed, trying to ignore the uncomfortable wetness that soaked his belly fur. At last, Lionheart and White Storm paused. Rusty skidded to a halt behind them and stood panting, while the two warriors stepped onto a rock that rested on the edge of a small ravine. We are very close to camp now, meowed Lionheart. Rusty strained to see any signs of life-moving leaves, a glimpse of fur among the bushes below, but his eyes saw nothing except for the same overgrowth that covered the rest of the forest floor. Use your nose. You must be able to scent it, hissed White Storm impatiently. Rusty closed his eyes and sniffed the air. White Storm was right. The scents were different from the cat scent he was used to. The air smelled stronger, speaking of many, many different cats. He nodded thoughtfully and announced, "I can smell cats." Lionheart and White Storm exchanged amused looks. "There will come a time, if you are accepted into a clan, then you will know each cat scent by name." Lionheart meowed. "Follow me." He led the way nimbly down the boulders to the bottom of the ravine and pushed his way through a thick patch of gorse. Rusty followed, and White Storm took up the rear. As his side scraped against the prickly gorse, Rusty looked down. He noticed that the grass beneath his paws had been flattened into a broad, strong-smelling track. "This must be the main entrance into the camp," he thought. Beyond the gorse, a clearing opened up. The ground in the center was bare, hard earth, shaped by many generations of paw steps. "This camp has been here a long time." The clearing was dappled by sunshine, and the air felt warm and still. Rusty looked around, his eyes wide. There were cats everywhere, sitting alone or in groups, sharing food or purring quietly as they groomed one another. "Just after sun-high, when the day is the hottest, it is time to share tongues," Lionheart explained. "Sharing tongues?" Rusty's echo. "Clan cats always spend time grooming each other and sharing the news of the day," White Storm told him. "We call it sharing tongues. It's a custom that binds the members of the clan together." The cats had obviously smelled Rusty's foreign scent, for heads began to turn and stare curiously in his direction. Suddenly, shy of meeting any cat's gaze directly, Rusty looked around the clearing. It was edged with thick grass, dotted with tree stumps and a fallen tree. A thick curtain of ferns and gorse shielded the camp from the rest of the woods. "Over there," meowed Lionheart, his tail flicking toward an impenetrable-looking tangle of brambles, "is the nursery, where the kits are cared for." Rusty swiveled his ears towards the bushes. He couldn't see through the knot of prickly branches, but he could hear several mewing kits from somewhere inside. As he watched, a ginger she-cat squirmed out through the small gap in front. That must be one of the queens, Rusty thought. A tabby queen with a distinctive black markings appeared around the bramble bush. The two she-cats exchanged a friendly lick between the ears before the tabby slipped inside the nursery, murmuring to the squealing kits. "The care of our kits is shared by all of the queens," meowed Lionheart. "All cats serve the clan. Loyalty to the clan is the first law in our warrior code, a lesson you must learn quickly if you wish to stay with us." "Here comes Bluestar," meowed White Storm, sniffing the air. Rusty sniffed the air too, and he was pleased that he was able to recognize the scent of the gray she-cat a moment before she appeared from the shadow of a large boulder that lay beside them at the head of the clearing. "He came," Bluestar purred, addressing the warriors. White Storm replied. Lionheart was convinced he would not. Rusty noticed the tip of Bluestar's tail twitch impatiently. "Well, what do you think of him?" he asked. "He kept up well on the return journey, despite his puny size," White Storm admitted. "He certainly seems strong for a kitty pet." "So it is agreed?" Bluestar looked at Lionheart and White Storm. Both cats nodded. "Then I shall announce his arrival to the clan." Bluestar leaped up onto the boulder and yowled. "Let all cats old enough to catch their own prey gather here beneath the high rock for a clan meeting." Her clear call brought all the cats trotting toward her, emerging like liquid shadows from the edges of the clearing. Rusty stayed where he was, flanked by Lionheart and White Storm. The other cats settled themselves below the high rock and looked expectantly up at their leader. Rusty felt a rush of relief as he recognized Graypaw, thick gray fur among the cats. Beside him sat a lovely young tortoiseshell queen, her black-tipped tail tucked neatly over small white paws. A dark gray tabby crouched behind them, the dark stripes on his fur looking like shadows in the moonlit forest. When the cats were still, Bluestar spoke. "ThunderClan needs more warriors. she began. Never before have we had so few apprentices in training. It has been decided that ThunderClan will take on an outsider to train as a warrior. Rusty heard indignant muttering erupt among the clan cats, but Bluestar silenced them with a firm yell. I have found a cat who is willing to become an apprentice of ThunderClan. Lucky to be an apprentice. Counterwalling, a loud voice rippled above the cats. Rusty craned his neck and saw pale Tabby standing up, glaring defiantly at the leader. Bluestar ignored the Tabby and addressed all of her clan. Lionheart and Whitestorm have met this young cat, and they agree with me that we should train him with the other apprentices. Rusty looked at Lionheart, then back at the clan to find all eyes were on him now. His fur prickled as he swallowed nervously. There was silence for a moment. Rusty was sure they must be able to hear his heart pulsing and smell his fierce scent. A deafening crescendo of caterwauling rose from the crowd. Where does he come from? Which clan does he belong to? What a strange scent he carries. That's not from the clan of any clan I know. Then one yell in particular sounded above the rest. Look at his collar. He's a kitty pet. It was the pale Tabby again. Once a kitty pet, always a kitty pet. This clan needs wild-born warriors to defend it, not another soft mouth to feed. Lionheart bent down and hissed into Rusty's ear. That is, Tabby is Longtail. He smells your fear. They all do. You must prove to him and all the other cats that your fear won't hold you back. But Rusty couldn't move. How could he prove to these fierce cats that he wasn't just a kitty pet? The Tabby continued to jeer at him. Your collar is a mark of the 2 legs, and that noisy jingling will make you a poor hunter at best. At worst, it will bring the 2 legs into our territory looking for the poor last kitty pet who fills the wood with his pitiful tinkling. All the cats howled in agreement. Longtail went on, well aware of how he had support of the audience. The noise of your treacherous bell will alert our enemies, even if your 2-legged stench doesn't. Lionheart hissed into Rusty's ear once more. Do you back down from a challenge? Rusty still did not move, but this time he was trying to pinpoint Longtail's position. There he was, just behind a dusty brown queen. Rusty flattened his ears, narrowed his eyes, hissing, leaped through the startling cats to fling himself onto the tormentor. Longtail was completely unprepared for Rusty's attack. He staggered sideways, losing his footing on the hard-baked earth, filling with rage and desperate to prove himself. Rusty dug his claws deep in the tabby cat's fur and sank in his teeth. No subtle rituals of swiping and boxing preceded this fight. The 2 cats were locked in a screaming, writhing tussle that flipped, and some cats were staring at the 2, and the others were just shocked. The 2 cats were locked in a screaming tussle that flipped, and some somersaulted around the clearing at the heart of the camp. The other cats had to spring out of the way to avoid the screeching whirlwind of fur. As Rusty scratched and struggled, he was suddenly aware that he felt no fear, only exhilaration. Through the roaring of the blood in his ears, he could hear the cats around them wailing with excitement. Then Rusty felt his collar tighten around his neck. Longtail gripped it between his teeth. He was tugging, and tugging hard. Rusty felt a terrible pressure at his throat. Unable to breathe, he started to panic. He writhed and twisted, but each movement only made the pressure worse. Reaching and gulping for air, he summoned up all his strength to try to pull away from Longtail's grip, and suddenly, with a loud snap, he was free. Longtail tumbled away from him. Rusty scrambled to his paws and looked around. Longtail was crouching 3 tail lengths away, and dangling from Longtail's mouth, Rusty saw his cowl, mangled and broken. At once, Blue Star leaped down from the high rock and silenced the noisy crowd with a thunderous caterwaul. Rusty and Longtail remained fixed to their spots, gasping for breath. Clumps of fur hung from their ruffled coat. Rusty could feel a cut stinging above his eye. Longtail's left ear was badly torn, and blood dripped down his lean shoulders onto the dusty ground. They each stared at each other, their hostility not yet spent. Blue Star stepped forward and took the collar from Longtail and placed it on the ground in front of her. The newcomer has lost his 2-leg collar in a battle for his honor. StarClan has spoken of its arrival. This cat has been released from the hold of its 2-leg owners and is free to join ThunderClan as an apprentice. Rusty looked up at Blue Star and solemnly nodded his acceptance. He stood up and stepped forward into a shaft of sunshine, welcoming the warmth on his sore muscles. The pool of light blazed bright and his orange pelt, making his fur glow. Rusty lifted his head proudly and looked at the cats that surrounded him. This time no cat argued or jeered. He had shown himself to be a worthy opponent in battle. Blue Star approached Rusty and placed the shredded collar on the ground in front of him. She touched his ear gently with her nose. "You look like a brand of fire in the sunlight," she murmured. Her eyes flashed briefly, as if her words had more meaning than Rusty knew. "You have fought well." Then she turned to the clan. "From this day on, he has earned a warrior name. This apprentice will be called Firepaw, in honor of his flame-colored coat." She stepped back, and with the other cats, she waited silently for his next move without hesitating. Rusty turned and kicked dust and grass over his collar as though burying it in his dirt. Longtail growled and limped out of the clearing towards a fern-shaded corner. The cats split into groups, murmuring to each other excitedly. "Hey, Firepaw!" Rusty heard Graypaw's friendly voice behind him. Firepaw. A thrill of pride surged through him at the sound of his new name. He turned to greet the gray apprentice with a welcoming sniff. "Great fight, Firepaw," he mewed, "especially for the kitty pet. Longtail is a warrior, although he only just finished his training 2 moons ago. That scar you left on his ear won't let him forget you in a hurry. You've spoiled on his good looks, that's for sure." "Thanks, Graypaw," Firepaw replied. "He put up quite a fight, though." He licked his front paw and began to wipe the deep scratch that stung on his eye. As he washed, he heard his new name again, echoing among the cats. "Firepaw! Hey, Firepaw! Welcome, young Firepaw." Firepaw closed his eyes for a moment and let the voices wash over him. "Good name, too," Graypaw mewed approvingly, jolting him awake, too. Firepaw looked around. Where did Longtail creep off to? "I think he was heading towards Spotted Leaf's den." Graypaw tipped his head to the fern-enclosed corner Longtail had disappeared into. "Who's our medicine cat? Not bad looking either. Younger and a lot prettier than most." A low yowl next to them stopped Graypaw mid-speech. They both turned. Firepaw recognized the powerful gray tabby who had sat behind Graypaw earlier. Darkstripe. He mewed. Graypaw, dipping his head respectfully. The sleek Tom looked at Firepaw for a moment. "Lucky your collar snapped when it did. Longtail is a young warrior, but I can't imagine him being beaten by a kitty pet." He spat the word kitty pet scornfully and stalked off. "Now, Darkstripe," Graypaw hissed to Firepaw under his breath. "Is he neither young nor pretty?" Graypaw was about to agree with his new friend when he was interrupted by a warning yell from an old gray cat sitting at the edge of the clearing. Small Ear smells trouble, Gray Paw meowed, immediately alert. Firepaw barely had time to look around before a young cat crashed through the bushes and into the camp. He was skinny, and apart from the white tip on his long tail, he was jet black, thin from head to toe. Gray Paw gasped. That's Ravenpaw. Why is he alone? Where's Tiger Claw? Firepaw looked at Ravenpaw, staggering across the floor of the clearing. He was panting heavily, his coat was ruffled and dusty, and his eyes were wide with fear. Who are Ravenpaw and Tiger Claw? Firepaw whispered to Gray Paw, and several other cats raced past him to greet the new arrival. Gray Paw's an apprentice. Tiger Claw is his mentor, Gray Paw quickly explained. Gray Paw went out with Tiger Claw and Red Tail at sunrise for a mission against RiverClan, the lucky Furball. Red Tail, Firepaw echoed through all these confused names. Blue Star's deputy, hissed Gray Paw. But why on earth has Ravenpaw come back alone? He added to himself. He lifted his head to listen. Blue Star stepped forward. Ravenpaw? The she-cat spoke calmly, but a look of worry clouded her blue eyes. The other cats drew back, curling their lips with anxiety. What happened? Blue Star jumped off the high rock and looked down at the trembling cat. Speak, Ravenpaw. Ravenpaw was still struggling for breath, and his sides heaved fitfully, while the dust around him turned red with blood. He still managed to scramble up on the high rock and stand beside Blue Paw. He turned to the crowd of eager faces that surrounded him and summoned enough breath to declare, Red Tail is dead.